we've got another topic, and that actually is a frustration that was expressed about inadequate training support, training focus. And that's, we'd like to figure out how to manage non-female coaches, modifying training inappropriately for women. Just because we're women doesn't mean that the training should simply be easier. It does not mean we can't be equally as strong, if not stronger or faster, than our male counterparts. We may just need to modify the training due to vastly different physiologic makeup than men. That's all. Fortunately, the three of us have gone through this in a personal formula and format in multiple sports, as well as professionally with helping women. So we have a diverse background. And maybe we can share a few of those experiences of how we've adapted and how we've supported others.
This was an interesting question. So I thought about this before we had this chat, and I was trying to think of like an example for myself. I've worked with Scott now since, I don't know, for 9 years, male coach. And I always had the opposite problem with him. And I cleared this before I said this. I didn't want to like throw him under the bus. Scott's a wonderful coach, but he would always overtrain me, like do way more than I could. And I think, being an athlete, I've learned now as a coach that women or not, like everyone needs their own individual training. And, in his defense, when I was 15, other girls could handle what he was giving me, but I just couldn't. I'm late to developing. So I kind of had the opposite problem, which I think other women have too. And, I would get frustrated at myself because my teammates were training more or they could do more pull-ups and feeling inadequate. But I think now as a coach, I take that into everyone. And, people get really frustrated, women and men, I think, about, feeling like they're not doing enough when they need to just realize where they're at is great. And training needs to be adapted for every individual.
That's kind of what I was thinking about too. And I think one thing that is a little tricky with training women is I think both men and women think maybe it's completely different. And it is in some ways. But in some ways, it's not at all. Or for some people, it is very similar than training for men. If you're doing an expedition where you're going to be having to carry 60 pounds, you're going to be having to carry 60 pounds. So eventually you'll need to be able to do that too. And you can. And we'll talk about this in the next theme but maybe we just tailor the plan slightly differently so that you're doing strength when you know that you're going to be the strongest in your cycle. Or if you have an off day, then you don't say like, okay, well, I guess I'm not cut out for this, but rather you talk to your coach and you're able to do it on a different day, or you modulate the workout so that you're doing, intervals instead of one solid session. And so having the depth of knowledge also to know how much just individualization there is, whether you're a male or female, I think is really important. And I think sometimes women will also downplay what we're capable of and think that we can't do as much. But trying to just, ultimately, I would hope that everything is an individualized approach, and we just know the common factors that women are addressing, but not making that completely shift how we're training in particular.
I think that's all incredibly valuable insight, and that's a huge piece of why I think the three of us enjoy coaching and want to be coaches, is that we can be that voice until the voice is within the athlete's head themselves, of that learning to listen to your body. So through hormone cycles, or whether it's setting a goal and understanding that as women we have different strengths, maybe we don't have as much testosterone on board as men, not nearly as much. And so certain aspects of getting strong may take longer and may take a different design, but we can most assuredly achieve the goals. Turns out that women hormonally is when we're younger, and most of the time, these are statistics, we tend to be better at endurance when we're, all through our lives. It's the way we work metabolically, but it doesn't mean that men aren't great at it. So it doesn't mean that these are all the things. So we look at where we are as an athlete, we look at our physiologic makeup and our experience level and what we did and where we're going, and we design a program and execute it, and then listen. Are we tired? Are our bodies saying things? Observe how that training works around our menstrual cycle. I would imagine that the three of us all have different personal experiences with how that affects us, which when you think about that is, it's really pretty incredible. So that's what's a great thing about having our knowledge base, both from personal experience, the hundreds of athletes we've coached, and friends in life to help support each other and create a platform where discussions can be like easily had and feel comfortable about asking those questions and speaking up. It's one of the things I mentor my staff about right now, my young gals who work for me in their 20s and 30s. It's like, I'll talk about anything you want to talk about. I'll help you any question, whatever it is. Like, don't feel like you have to be quiet about what your body's going through.
Yeah. I mean, just think if men were treated in similar ways where like, well, men aren't as good as at endurance. Like, men aren't trained to think anything. Like, they can do anything that they want. And I think it is really cool. And like, I'm raising two girls, and that's really fun. And that's, in some ways, that's a more fun. I have another friend who has a son, and she's like, well, you get the fun task. Like, I'm also debunking social norms, but it's a harder thing to do, to have an emotionally compassionate boy that's 6 years old. So all a work in progress.
I think training for the individual is super important. I mean, every woman is different. Some women have more testosterone than others. People respond to strength different, to endurance different. And I think just really learning to like accept where you're at. And it kind of goes back to our first topic of just like having confidence in where you are. And, even if a male coach tells you one thing or not, sometimes you just have to be okay with like kind of shutting that voice out and just doing yourself, like doing you.